Charter Trustees, officers, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for the Worshipful Mayor of Bournemouth.
Do sit down. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome all Charter Trustees to this meeting of the Bournemouth Charter Trustees and to the press and members of the public. And please note that this meeting is being recorded for live and subsequent broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. Just before I go on, I'm particularly delighted to see Jackie back in the Council chamber because she's not been too well and she's had a tree fall through her bedroom roof, narrowly missing her bed. You weren't in it at the time, Jackie. But I gather your bedroom's out of action, and it was a terrible shock, so it's really nice to see Jackie back here and taking part in this meeting. In order to ensure that the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone follow the ground rules for speaking. If you wish to speak, raise your hand physically to indicate. Where there appears to be consensus in the meeting for a motion, I will ask if there's any dissension, and when a formal vote is required, this will be carried out by a show of hands. As a courtesy, please do not talk amongst yourselves during debates. Before we start the business on the agenda, as you know, the Charter Trustees is a non-political body with the primary objective of being to maintain and promote the historic and ceremonial traditions of Bournemouth. I'm keen that we all work together to achieve this objective. And we'll carry on with the agenda. So item 1 is apologies. I'll ask the Honorary Clerk to report the apologies received for this meeting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologies have been received from Councillor Simon Bull, Councillor Richard Burton, Councillor Bobby Dove, Councillor George Farquhar, Councillor Dwayne Farr, Councillor May Haynes, Councillor Gillian Martin and Councillor Karen Rampton.
Thank you very much. Are there any more? Councillor Beasley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to add Phil Broadhead to that list, he's on local government business elsewhere.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to add Councillor Marcus Andrews to that list.
Sorry, did I miss somebody? Yes, sorry.
Can we add Councillor Olivia Brown to that list as well, please? She has a flu.
Is that everyone? I'm grateful to all of those who have turned out tonight because it can be a bit isolating. We're just so few, but I'm sure we'll get everything done very well. Thank you very much. Item 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Honorary Clerk, can you report on any declarations of interest received?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No declarations have been received to date. Members are advised, if you do believe you have a potential interest to declare, then there is guidance flowchart included in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. And item number 3 is confirmation of the minutes and matters arising. Charter Trustees, you're asked to receive the minutes of the meeting held on 27th of June, is that right, or was it October? It says on my crib sheet 27th of June. I think that's a mistake. It's the 24th of October.
It's the 16th of October.
16th of October, and to consider any matters arising. I have a couple of corrections to those minutes. Present were Councillor Canavan and Herritt, and they're to be added as they were in attendance. Are there any other amendments to those minutes before we sign them? Nope. If there's nothing, I'll be happy to sign. Agenda item 4 is the Charter Mayor's communication, and I'll just update you on a few highlights since we had our meeting. October seems such a long time ago, and I didn't realise quite how much had happened, but I won't keep you for too long. It's been a particularly interesting few months, especially in the lead up to Christmas and Remembrance Sunday. And we have a couple of, we certainly got Councillor Lawrence here, who's been mayor before, and I don't know if there's anybody else, but it's been a real eye-opener and very, very interesting. We started off early on in October with Bournemouth in Bloom, which do a fantastic job. I hadn't realised how important Bournemouth in Bloom are, but they do a fantastic job, not just in promoting people to have flower baskets outside of their houses and their businesses, which really enhance the town, but also they've got teams of people who go and plant up scruffy roadsides. They did the piece of land which leads down towards the BIC. As you come down the hill towards the roundabout by the BIC car park, there was a scruffy bit of pavement, and they planted that all up, and they do fantastic jobs. They've done another one at the Lansdowne, and led by Reverend Chris College. They do a fantastic job, all volunteers, and Chris was honoured in the New Year's honours, and I'd like to, on behalf of us all, send him our congratulations on that honour, because it's well deserved. He puts in an awful lot of time into Bournemouth in Bloom. There were a lot of things to do with Remembrance Sunday. I won't go through them all, but they were interesting, different. They weren't all the War Memorial here in Bournemouth. There was one in Throop. The one by JP Morgan have one, which is an annual event, and it was very interesting, and quite a number of their staff are ex-service people. I think with the American connection, that's something that they do, and they honour they very much honour their staff who are ex-service people. And Remembrance Sunday was interesting in that there were quite a lot of younger people taking part than we're used to seeing. And of course, Poppy Day, annual poppies by former councillor David Kelsey, who quite a lot of you will know and some of you won't know, but he does a fantastic job in getting everything going. It was followed soon after by Black History Month, which was completely new to me and was very, very interesting. I went to a couple of events, and one was a big one at the new building of the university, which is one you see when you're coming off the Lansdowne roundabout going towards the university. On the right-hand side, right at the Lansdowne, this amazing glass building, and inside it just didn't feel like anything we've ever seen in Bournemouth before. I know some of you will have been in there, probably studied or taught in there, but it was really amazing. And the Black History Month was an eye-opener, and it made me feel very proud that something like this is happening in Bournemouth, and well supported. One of the highlights was that I was invited to the High Sheriff of Dorset's legal service in the old church in Dorchester. And it was amazing. They had High Court judges all done up with their wigs and their gowns, and it was a proper church service. It's an annual event, and it was very, very dignified, and followed by a tea at which all sorts of people, apart from the High Sheriff, there were lots of lords, and there were the Lord Lieutenant, and it was a really amazing event, very, very interesting. I've done quite a lot of community events and honoured the members of the community, and there's a lot to do with food, providing food for people. And I've been to several different charities and different organisations and churches who collect food. They're not food banks, but these are people who collect food and every night from supermarkets. It's the stuff left over, the day food. It's sort of when you go into a supermarket and there's croissants and there are pizzas and those sort of things which they make up. They can't sell them the next day and they would normally go to waste. And these are all collected and they're put out on tables the next day. And there's one church in Winton, quite not far from the library. I've forgotten which church it is, but they do it every single day. They're committed to collecting mountains of the stuff. When I was there were over 500 croissants on the table, and we're talking about trestle tables just groaning with food, pies, pizzas, fruit, vegetables, the sort of vegetables that all of us would have in our fridges. A carrot with a tiny brown mark on it, they won't sell the next day. And people can come and just take it, and they're not asked for any proof of need. If they feel they need it, they can come and take it. And there's people doing this all over the town. Fantastic people growing food, like the Grounded community, and other people. So that's been a very interesting thing to see. And such credit to those people who are committed to doing it day in, day after day. Really good. I've been to a lot of interfaith and intercommunity events of all sorts, and it's also been very interesting. I went last week, there was a day of prayer at a church in Winton, St Luke's Church, and there were people there from every sort of religious community that you could imagine, and none. So there were people there from the Humanist Society, there were every variety of the Christian churches, there were Jewish, there were different sorts of Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus, the Mormons. A lot of people were there, and it was spine-tingling to all be praying for peace together, peace throughout the world, and it was really, really good. A most powerful, freezing church on the Sunday afternoon, absolutely perishingly cold, but we were all warm because it really was heart-warming and body-warming to be together and lighting candles and just thinking and reflecting on some of the trouble spots in the world and how, if we were to work together, it wouldn't be like that. Wouldn't that be marvellous? But it doesn't. I gather that I wasn't at the last big BCP council meeting, but I gather that went on for an awful long time. And if we can't manage 70 people in this room, I don't think the world is going to be an easy thing for us all to manage. I went to an amazing event, which was a dinner at the Guildhall in London. I went with the Mayor of Poole and the Mayor of Christchurch, and we were invited to the what used to be the Royal Hampshire Regiment. It's now the Rifles, and they had their annual dinner at the Guildhall. I know that other people in this room have been, but I'd never been to the Guildhall. It was absolutely amazing. We were driven up beautifully by Jeff, our mace bearer today, and when we got there, it was there were the mayors of all the cities that the Rifles have been given the freedom of. So Bournemouth and Poole and Christchurch have all given them the freedom, and it was a very male-dominated dinner. There must have been 490 men and 20 women in the whole place, and it was very noisy in this amazing Guildhall. And Camilla, the Queen, was there, and she is the Colonel-in-Chief of the Rifles, and she gave a brilliant speech. She spoke really, really well and really kindly. She was presenting awards to quite a number of the younger soldiers for things that they'd done or achievements that they'd achieved. And she had a kind word to say to every one of them, and I was so impressed. It can't have been easy for her, and it wouldn't have been easy for me. I know she's the Queen, but nonetheless, it was a very impressive evening. And I'll finish by saying that one of the most impressive things that we did, and I hope that will be carried on by future mayors. Hazel, my secretary back there, came to me one day and she said that the mayor's parlour, was having its Christmas tree installed at the beginning of December, and would I like to come along, would any of my family like to come and decorate the tree? And the answer was no. And she suggested, and I agreed completely, that, well, let's invite some other young people in, and we invited in the young carers. And I know that some of you are aware of the young carers, but most people are not. And these were very, very young children, little children, who have huge caring responsibilities at home. And they came into the parlour, 15 or so of them, without their mums and dads, and they were very timid at first, and Jeff had laid out a lovely buffet, like a party buffet for them. But once they got decorating that tree, they had a wonderful time. By the end of it, they were very animated. But I think the thing which stuck with me, and I know I've told some of you this, but it can bear telling again, they'd all had a wonderful time. And one little boy, there was this big box of baubles, Christmas tree baubles, but there was not 1 inch of space left on that Christmas tree for anything else. It was absolutely a dog's dinner of a Christmas tree. It had everything on it. They just loved it. And one little boy came up to me and said he delved into the box and he found a little plastic Christmas tree about so big. And he said, "Could I take this home?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I want to put it on my brother's grave." And it was very moving and very sad. And the social worker who was with him said that was the first time in a year that he's mentioned his brother who had died. And there were so many stories, and children have got so many big responsibilities. It was absolutely heartrending to see. It was completely and utterly nothing to do with how much money or their family circumstance. It was to do with illness of parent or older sibling, that those kids sometimes have to get themselves up. 6 years old little girl has to get herself up, has to check that mother's still alive before she can go to school. And if her mother's unconscious, her mother's got some horrible illness, she's got a list of people on her fridge that she's got to call. And you think of our children and how we do so much for them, and how disadvantaged those children are with the responsibilities that they've got. And I just hope that that will be something that future mayors will carry on with. I don't think there'll be any mayors whose children will be, or children or family will be in need of decorating a Christmas tree. I shouldn't have thought so, but I had the most wonderful letter of thanks from those children, and I just think it should become an annual event. I'm pleased to say that our Honorary Clerk, Graham Farrant, has agreed that I can have some time with corporate comms, because I do all these amazing things and visit very worthwhile charities every single week, and I don't have an instrument to be able to put that stuff in the public arena. It's great for me to tell a handful of people in here, but the public need to know that the Mayor doesn't just sit in the parlour and drink tea, that there are some wonderful charities and wonderful organisations, and they deserve the publicity to know that the job that the Mayor does is not for the Mayor's benefit, it's for the benefit of these other people, and to thank them. And I've now got some time with corporate comms who will be able to put this out on social media for me officially. And I've got a meeting later this week with the lady who's going to be doing that. So I think that's really important and really worthwhile. And I know that something similar has been allocated to the Mayor of Poole, and the funding has somehow been found for that. But I think, to my mind, that's really, really important, that people know what else is going on. And I think that's a fair summary. I won't keep you any longer, but there's loads of other stuff happened, but those were the highlights, the things that were different and were quite unique for me for this year. And thank you very much. So we'll move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is the report of the Civic Working Group. And I call on Councillor John Beasley to present this report. Councillor Beasley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Are you content that I remain seated, or would you prefer me to stand?
I'm happy for you to sit down.
Thank you very much. Fellow trustees, there are two substantive issues in front of us this evening. The first is a request for a budget to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day in June 2024. We've, as the working group asked for an amount to be included, a provision of £5,000. It's not more specific than that at this stage because we're not entirely clear as to what perhaps the pool charter trustees will be doing and what other events may be taking place in the area. But it did seem appropriate to have a provision in the budget so that we could do something that would be of significance and also not to conflict with those that are taking place elsewhere. So I hope you'll feel minded to support what we've brought forward this evening. The second is the implementation of a new Mayor's Award scheme, and that is to introduce a scheme for Bournemouth and for Bournemouth residents who are volunteering within the community. There's a request for a budget of £2,000, and you'll see that there are two recommendations attached to this proposal, and they are, I will read them out for formality. The first is that the Charter Trustees agree to the implementation of a Mayor's Award scheme in principle, and B, that the Civic Working Group be delegated authority to oversee the use of any budget agreed in support of the scheme. Again, it's early days, but we do need to give the Mayor sufficient flexibility to do something that's both appropriate but isn't so large that it'll cost too much. And I think we've reached a sensible compromise with a figure of £2,000. We'll be able to tell, to be frank, once we've gone through this process for the first time, whether that is the appropriate amount or thereabouts. But it's certainly a good place to start. And so I hope that you'll be minded to support the two recommendations that I've just read out. The third item is just for noting, and it concerns the use of the coat of arms. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Beasley. Are we to vote on that tonight? Just finding out if the vote is to be taken tonight or whether it's got to be put forward. Okay, so my advice is that we'll be taking that item under the budget. Thank you, Councillor Beasley. Have we changed our minds?
Yes. So we probably do need to agree the delegation. At least. So just ask if everybody agrees with the two recommendations.
So does everybody here agree with Councillor Beasley's recommendations from the Civic Working Group? And anyone disagree? Thank you very much. That's carried forward. Thank you. Which brings us to item number 6, which is the budget and precept for 2024-25. I call on Matthew Filmer, Responsible Financial Officer, to present this report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Charter Trustees. So the report starts off with an in-year update for 23-24, which you'll see on Appendix A to the report. We're currently forecasting an underspend of over £18,000. Now, the budget for 23-24 was on the proviso of drawing down £10,000 worth of reserves to support the budget and to offset the coronation events. So what that actually means is we're putting £8,500 to reserves. Okay, and you'll see that at the bottom in terms of the reserve movement that's set out on Appendix A. So the budget for 24-25, we're proposing a number of changes which takes into account that in-year position I've just set out, as well as a budget workshop that we held at the latter part of last year. So firstly, we're looking to reduce some of the budget on hospitality, mayor making and the out-of-pocket expenses lines. These budgets have consistently been underspent, but I wanted to sort of remind Charter Trustees that there is reserves, as I'll touch on in a minute, so if we did want to go over that budget allocation, the reserves are there to offset any additional expenditure, and if we consistently see meeting that budget or going over that budget, we can increase the budget in future years. We've built in a new provision for the corporate comms support that Madam Mayor just mentioned, around £400, which covers a number of hours from the corporate and the communication and marketing team at the council. Now, one of the biggest changes in the budget is to do with the staffing recharge, which is set out on table 1 of the report. So it's become standard practice at the council for next year that we charge an overhead percentage on top of the staff costs. And this is to recognise the cost of that employment. So it covers things such as payroll, HR team, the cost of this building, etc. And so we calculate that for all the other charges that we charge externally to external organisations, and that comes up about 21% on top of salary costs. We've also included a charge for the honorary clerk, which has never been charged to the Charter Trustees. So that's also now a new line, which you'll see at the bottom of table 1. And the last changes to pick up, which was as per the previous agenda item, we built in 5,000 for the D-Day anniversary events and 2,000 for the proposed Mayor Awards. And that's been funded via reserves and merging of some existing budgets. So reserves then, as I said earlier, we're looking to contribute to reserves, and they're set out in table 2 of the report. And by the end of the year, we're forecasting just shy of £100,000, which is around 67% of the council tax precept. So to support the budget for 24-25, I'm proposing to draw down £23,645, and that still leaves the reserves at a level of over 50% of the council tax precept. It's kind of an unwritten rule that we'd want around about 20% cover for the council tax precept to deal with any unforeseen expenditure, so we're still more than double in terms of a risk cover for reserves that exist. Now, the last part of the report picks up the council tax. So the council tax base is the number of properties that the Charter Trustees levy the charge against, and that's increased slightly for 24-25, which gives us an additional £1,000. But taking into account that reserve movement that I mentioned earlier, I'm proposing that we set a precept of 148,091, and we freeze council tax at the 23-24 Band D level at £2.27. So I will stop there, Madam Mayor, and take any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any questions, comments? Councillor Campbell.
It's not a question, Madam Chair. I've been reminded several times that this institution is separate from the local authority itself as a legal institution, but I think from the public's point of view, I think that legal difference is probably lost. What they would be looking for would be how much they're paying on their council tax and whether or not they're actually getting value for money. And I think there would also be an expectation that we would need to be careful with the money, given that every household is no doubt feeling the pinch of the cost of living crisis and are having to make economies in their own finances. So I think with that in mind, Madam Mayor, I would question why we are spending £107,000 on staff costs out of this total budget. It is a huge proportion. Now, I understand there is an element of recharging, but frankly, this is ridiculous. I think the council taxpayers of Bournemouth would expect that within their council tax, that the local authority would be paying for its staff. Yet here we are having to pay the local authority for the use of their staff. That seems to me to be questionable. Let me put it no stronger than that. So the drawdown of the £23,000 from reserves, I am assuming that figure was picked. Picked is probably calculated on the basis that would enable us to hold the council tax Band D at £2.27. That's my reading of it. I'm prepared to be wrong. But given that there is still a significant amount of reserves, the question remains is, could we actually reduce it? Could we actually reduce the precept for this organisation to the council taxpayers of Bournemouth? And the answer to me, based on these figures, is yes, we could. So, if we can, why don't we? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And I'll ask Matt to respond to that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure that's a very specific question, but more of a statement in terms of the budget. But I'll just remind you of a couple of things, Charter Trustees, about the budget. So 70% of the charges that the Charter Trustees incur are fixed charges from the council. If the Charter Trustees were to go alone, without the support of the council, which it essentially piggybacks on a number of contracts, insurance being one of them, it would cost a lot more to operate the Charter Trustees as a standalone organisation than it does at the moment. So if we were to employ the number of staff directly, we'd also have to include all the payroll costs, potential pension strain on those members of staff. It's likely to cost more than what's been set out in that budget. The point around drawing down reserves to potentially reduce the council tax Band D, that would be possible. You could reduce the Band D charge, but it wouldn't be sustainable in that it would perhaps be a one-off, but we've still got those charges to incur the following year, potentially higher costs if inflation carries on, so it would be short-lived. Hence why I'm looking to freeze the Band D charge, so at least it's a sustainable charge. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Cardwell.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. In that case, are you saying that there is a trajectory here where you're expecting those reserves to reduce to 20% over, say, 3 years?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes. So the reserves, if we carried on as we are using reserves to support the budget, they will deplete to a level that's around that 20% mark, and we would have to increase the Band D charge at some point.
Hello. So I'm probably going to be showing my ignorance here, but I'm just looking at that table on figure 1, and I can see that we've got, so just picking up on the Mayspare budget from 23-24 to 24-25, that's a heck of an increase. And I don't understand how that could be, that we're increasing that amount by so much.
Thank you. Matt?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the 24-25 budget for the staff also include the pay award that went in for 24-25, and some of the lower paid members of staff on a percentage basis actually got a higher increase than the higher paid staff. So it looks like it's a high amount. I think from memory it's about a 1925 increase for staff at a lower band, plus the 21% overhead cost, which wasn't for 23-24.
Let's call on our honorary.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to emphasise that I think this is a more accurate reflection of the cost of providing the services. Just as a reminder, the Charter Trustees are effectively a parish council, but with no powers. So if you wanted an alternative method, you would have to be set up as if it were a parish council in terms of the staffing, but no powers to deliver. So I think our sense is this is probably the most economic way of doing it and provide the right support, particularly for the mayoralty across the area.
Well, I respect that point, but we're not being given that opportunity, are we?
I think that decision entirely lies in the hands of councillors and members, and I think that is being explored by the administration as an alternative during this year. If that's helpful, Madam Mayor.
Can I ask a question? I'll give myself permission. Matt, if there was, I know these figures are big, but when it comes to a precept, they're quite small on households. So I know that they're sometimes in pennies or proportions of £1. Can you explain a little bit about that? How much is the precept at the moment, and what would a reduction of, say, I don't know, some of it, what difference would that make? If you understand my question. I know it's much less. It's always been surprisingly less per household than one would be led to believe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So,
Councillors, can we have one conversation, please?
thank you, Madam Mayor. So, I think, bear in mind the bandy charge is £2.27, so say a 10% increase or decrease would be around 27p. I'm not very good at mental arithmetic, but it sounds about right, 27p, which isn't a huge amount of money when you think about the Charter Trustee budget. But I think one thing to remember, particularly from the public perspective and the perception, the amount of reserves that we're sitting on, is a small, what might seem a small penny increase for the bandy charge actually equates to quite a high percentage when you look at it on the council tax billing piece. So that's why I'm trying to keep the bandy charge at least frozen to avoid any of those large percentage increases on the bill. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you very much. I knew it was in the pennies, but of course for some people 27p might be a huge amount, but we're not talking about lots of pounds. Any more questions? So if there's no move, I think we can move on to the next item on the agenda and accept. We're going. Sorry. So can we agree this budget?
Want to oppose it, please, Madam Mayor?
We didn't hear you, Councillor Canavan.
I was hoping you'd take a vote so that we could vote against it. Thank you.
I'm happy to move for a vote if that's what you'd like. Those in favour. Those in favour. Any against? And anybody abstaining? Thank you very much. So I think it's carried.
13 in favour, 6 abstentions and 1 against.
13 in favour, 6 abstention and 1 against. Thank you very much, everybody. Which moves us on to item 7, which is the review of the risk register. And I call on Neil Fraser, Deputy Head of Democratic Services, to update us. Thank you, Neil.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick one. Only one thing to highlight since in terms of changes from the previous risk register, and that is the downgrading on severity of risk on civic dignitary personal injury due to ongoing actions in relation to working with event providers and other organisers to safeguard civic injuries. So beyond that, unless there are any comments, put it to the trustees to approve, please.
Thank you very much. And we move on to item 8 on the... Oh, I'm sorry, we've got to agree Neil's review of the risk register. Has everybody agreed? Any agreed? It's consensus. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to item number 8, which is the exciting appointment of the office of Mayor for 24-25 and subsequent Deputy Mayor in 25-26. I call on Neil Fraser, Deputy Head of Democratic Service, to update us.
Yes, again, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to confirm Councillor George Farquhar as the Mayor-elect for 24-25 and subsequent Deputy Mayor-elect for 25-26 by way of uncontested nomination. Thank you.
He's not here, unfortunately. He's got flu, and I didn't want he didn't want to, and I didn't want him to give it to everybody in this room. So, congratulations. Would you pass on our congratulations to Councillor George, who I know is going to be a fabulous mayor because he's been such a support to me and he just enjoys people. He's a real people person. I know that Councillor Beasley, you wanted to say something. Can I call on you now?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. As Charter Trustees will know, I had placed a nomination for myself for Mayor for 24-25, but withdrew that nomination on the 12th of January. So I'd like to take this opportunity to wish George Farquhar every success as the Mayor-elect. I, like you, Madam Mayor, am sure that he will make an excellent Mayor and have a truly great year. I wish him every possible success. I'd also like to thank the Leader of the Council for her intervention in respect of her suggestions for nominees for mayor for the following 2 years. As members will know, I've been a Bournemouth councillor for some 24 years, 12 of them in council leadership, and so I hope to become Mayor of Bournemouth on some future occasion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Beazley. Does anybody else want to comment, or will you leave that for the day that George is actually installed? I'm sure lots of people have lots of things to say. He's really great fun, a great person to be working with. And with that happy news, unless there's any other business, I'm happy to close the meeting at 20 to 7. Thank you very much, everybody.
Please be upstanding for the Mayor of Bournemouth.